Hello, and welcome back to another Hearts Iron 4 US single player Got to Damarun Let's Play. I apologize, this isn't going to be perfect. It never is, but long COVID sometimes just makes it hard to focus, but um, I don't know. Gotta progress this. I meant to do this video a couple days ago. I know folks have been waiting a little while. I try not to leave you waiting more than 3 days normally for a new video. Sorry, smudge my glasses here. Um, so I just got an event, far right violence in the capital, basically, like January 6th, but in March of 1937. Protests escalating to violence. I think I read this to you before. Basically, fascists have stormed the Capitol building, tried to abduct congressmen. Capitol Police fought them. Gunfights, dead. 2 congressmen injured in the firefight or killed. Doesn't really matter. The point is far right violence. Injured. I'm pretty sure realistically the firefight with the weapons of this era and how inaccurate they were probably would have resulted in death, not injury. So yeah, far right scum are pissed just because they've passed an accumulated wealth tax and a union representation act, which I haven't done reshuffle Congress. I haven't done anything that might be considered really subverting democracy with it. Even holding true to the ideals, the fascists just they see where the writing on the wall, where it's going to lead to full desegregation of the South soon. Which, I mean, they may have tried to use various ways the U.S. electoral system is organized to block that, and historically did until the 60s, 70s, but it's not a real democracy if you have people being segregated and mistreated and abused. Democracy has an obligation to protect all citizens equally. And I'm going to be taking the U.S. in a democratic socialist direction anyways. Which is a Marxist ideology, but not like the Soviet Union has elections. So, anyways, I am very pressed for time to prepare now because it's not long before the fascists will start a second U.S. Civil War. I only have 659,000 men in the army, and most of them haven't finished training with their rifles. Some have. Like the 1st National Guard Division here near DC. Before too long, I'll want to change these back to National Guard divisions. Yeah, these are XL divisions. These are going to be turned into assault divisions. Probably medium assault divisions, which 15,600 men. It's basically 15 infantry divisions, support artillery, and engineers. These are some of the guys who are actually fully trained. There aren't many. Let's see where they are, just to show quickly. So some of the people out near the Oklahoma, Texas Panhandle, basically area, actually. It's near Texas Panhandle, and I think some divisions there. Looks like the Panama Canal divisions, Panama Canal Force. Also, so these are fully trained. And what I'll need to do soon is probably convert them to the respected divisions of support companies that will drop them the trained, and then I'll probably disable equipment at first. Get people retrained as engineers and artillerymen, and then hand out rifles. But I can't keep expanding the number of men too long. In fact, having men who aren't equipped or fully trained is only beneficial if you have support companies in the division, only a tiny bit for the extra organization. And I've started stockpiling M1 Grans and some Dutch-made versions of basically the same kind of level of equipment. I'll have to increase my production of artillery eventually, but let's go. It's too much to do. I've also reorganized this queue. Trying to prepare as best I can for the Civil War. I'll win it probably regardless, but I want to win it with. I'm gonna drag it out some for extra belt slots from the generic focus tree the South gets in the non-aligned states. But I do want to grab a bunch of states, liberate them from the Neo-Confederacy early, and then keep them bottled up just shy of surrender. And I'd like to gain those states back with as little bloodshed as possible. I should say with as few casualties as possible, and lose as few men as possible while they're bottled up. So overwhelming force is the idea. But I also don't want to hurt my civilian industry snowball, or else I would have started building mill a while ago. I was looking through the various games I have. It does look like all the games I do Let's Plays, Hearts Iron 4 here has the most potential to potentially gain new viewers and subscribers to all my series. And that there's a lot of people play this game and it's actually increasing. Of course, there's a lot of right-wingers who indulge their fascist fantasies and will never, ever watch my series if I'm playing a communist path. Maybe at some point I might do fascist Italy path. I may have no sympathy for fascists, but I'll play most of them, except I will never, ever play the Nazis. That is the one rule I've set for myself. I'll play other German paths, and sometimes take a little while to do the ideology flip, but Hitler has to go bye-bye. That's the one iron rule I've set, because he was an evil, murderous piece of garbage. Right. It's such a simple rule, and yet many players would take objection to even that. I swear fascism these days is just, it's on the rebound. It's so deeply, deeply concerning. And people create false equivalencies with socialism, which is not at all the same thing. One group wants to mass murder people based on their ethnic identity or being disabled. I have long COVID, so I'd be someone they come for, or political identity. And the other group just wants to guarantee every person food, housing, healthcare, dignity, guaranteed employment, and end the existence of billionaires, not as in kill them or anything, but as in seize their assets and have the corporations controlled by workers' cooperatives or the federal government or states or municipalities, or even the towns. I guess it's technically municipality, but I guess you could have like county level governments versus towns. Local ownership and democratic ownership of businesses instead of ownership by handful of unelected billionaires. So that's not at all the same thing. Just because both groups oppose capitalism does not make them the same. And fascists don't really oppose capitalism. They say they oppose capitalism. Let's be clear on that. Hitler and the Nazis, in fact, engaged in mass privatizations, which is yes, they nationalized some war industries, and they also privatized a lot of infrastructure and a lot of industries as well. They actually privatized more than they nationalized. They were, some people would say, the pragmatists. They weren't diehard capitalists, but they did argue against common ownership and anything that might be considered socialist principles of production and ownership. In fact, one of the reasons the British didn't come down hard on the Nazis and actually tried to utilize them and harness them for a while, like under Chamberlain, Churchill actually played a role in that and then distanced himself and made it look like he was always against Hitler, which is an absolute lie. There are quotes about him actually praising Hitler earlier in his political career. But the reason the appeasement school within the British didn't come down on Hitler partly is because they hoped that they would crush the communists in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union and weaken their enemies. Because the British considered communism to be their biggest threat and not fascism. The British Empire, which, remember, it was an empire at this time, not a democracy, despite what the game calls. May have been elections in the UK proper, but you know, the Indians, colonized people of Yemen, the colonized people of Egypt, none of these had elections, democratic rights. That's an empire. Alright. Anyhow. Got a little bit of production of Springfield rifles, which I use for training. Huge demand for M1s. Let's not pile them up. But, yeah. They're a higher priority in the artillery, even. Need to get a full equipment load out of those out there. These huge numbers of men I'm training and will have taught how to shoot. Need to get them actual guns and ammunition as soon as I can to the Civil War. Alright. Be at least 5 days till those guys are... Do I get approved ship torpedo launchers? Let's see. These powered pumps. Now get advanced fitting works. Work on high-speed cruising. But I should probably start production of some fleet destroyers. That is 1936 destroyers with heavier torpedo loads. They're actually meant for combat. They're meant to work alongside the torpedo cruisers. I don't know if I've explained this carefully before. Yeah. I should actually do a little more micro on that. Well, I've got my attention. The torpedo cruisers are a double win mechanic. Torpedoes are just awesome and are underutilized in people's fleet builds. They're much better than lighter heavy guns much of the time in terms of cost effectiveness, IC versus how much destructive power they can do, especially if you have a torpedo Loading master. This trait allows torpedoes to fire at basically a third the rate of other weapons. And while torpedoes are somewhat easier to dodge, they have such a higher attack that they're massively more worthwhile, at least on cruisers and destroyers. Even if battle cruisers and battleships could mount a ton of torpedoes, you wouldn't want to because they'd just be overkill on a lot of the targets they'd hit. But on smaller ships, they're great. But torpedo cruisers, because they just don't have enough slots to mount enough torpedoes relative to their cost, they're not as cost effective as fleet destroyers. But what their advantages is they're longer range, they do better in foul weather, but most of all, they're more survivable when they get to a level of damage where they'll start retreating from a battle. It'll take more additional hits so they would actually sink, which means you're more likely for them to actually survive fights. So if you already have a stronger fleet, you'll suffer fewer losses with some torpedo cruisers mixed in to supplement your destroyers. And torpedo cruisers will have one medium battery always, which is better and more cost effective for shore bombardment than the guns of destroyers. I think, well, I shouldn't assume that. Let's see. Typically it'll be like this, 1.5 or 130 versus something like this, 5 for 350. Yeah, no, it is. It's more cost effective. Even, of course, light guns are far less useful and heavy for shore bombardment, but they're also a little better with shore bombardment. And they use less fuel for whatever it's worth and manpower. Torpedo cruisers for a given amount of offensive power and naval supremacy and all that. Because they'll survive more fights, though, they'll get to higher experience levels. Yeah, I don't know if I'd be building them as a minor naval power. Japan, you might build them because they get a special national spirit that makes their torpedo cruisers better. In the U.S., because they can easily be the strongest navy in the world. Or the British, you might do them too. But like a smaller nation, just fleet destroyers are probably better as destroyers with a high torpedo loadout and not messing with like sonar, because you're not using to fight subs, you're using to fight cruisers, capital ships. Torpedoes also ignore armor, so armor will provide no protection, and they do crits at twice the rate of normal guns. At 10% chance versus it's 5% when guns can't pierce armor. So on April 8th, I'll need to rotate around that Hearts of Barbed Wire. That'll be the next song. That's a good one. Redistribute some of these naval dockyards. Oop. There we go. So these are, the ferry class is just a cheap anti-sub destroyer line. It has some torpedoes, so it's not completely defenseless, but its main role is to deploy depth charges and protect convoys. That's why I don't bother using 36 destroyer hulls with them, designing something like that, because they should be used properly, rarely seen combat against surface ships. It's not worth extra manpower and cost and such. And the Navy XP designed something that can hunt subs as 36 destroyer, despite them swimming in it. Almost time to pre-deploy. So there's two places that really need more men. Springfield, Missouri here for pushing down at least to this river across from Little Rock. Might not be able to take Little Rock itself, that depends, but I just don't have enough equipped divisions in the area. Oh, jeez, these guys are super crazy under-equipped. Change of plans there. They're going to go to Oklahoma. Here. I need more men here. Anyways. I also want some people here south of DC, and then I'll want some major coastal cities. Because sometimes the AI just ignores they don't have naval supremacy and does naval invasion they shouldn't be able to do. So, yeah. But yeah, I did not expect I would get this event as soon as I did. Get a Civil War in 37. I guess my multiplayer game and lose is bad. I didn't mess up as bad as I thought by delaying the Union Representation Act, because it did delay the Civil War, gave me more time to prepare. Which, I mean, from a min-maxy standpoint, you'd be better doing it earlier, undoubtedly. Indubitably. But since I'm also constantly distracted by giving advice to the other player there, I'd definitely screw up and make mistakes if I was trying to multitask that with also earlier Civil War, which should be harder to do correctly. All right. Let's see. Probably be auxiliaries around here. I just don't have enough equipment to equip a bunch of engineers. Let's see, each engineer division takes 30 support, engineer company support, 30 support equipment. I have 45 in stockpile, and so I'll have a little more than 600. So yeah, the majority of my divisions ought to be auxiliary. That is, have artillery but no engineers. Anyways. Lots of manpower. I can't imagine that they would ever reach they're almost certainly enough to fight green either way, so I'd rather have a lot more men. It will take longer for them to reach trained for the little extra org. Hoping to avoid too intensive combat in this area. My best men are Out east, where I expect the fiercest fighting. And near the Texas Panhandle, which I guess is rough terrain, some hills. I'd like to grab this supply depot very early, and then after grabbing that, and maybe taking this to shore my front line. I'll try and redeploy some divisions, probably east through here. Grab Little Rock, grab Tennessee. Eventually I'll advance down towards New Orleans, but yep. Oh, yeah, I should have always 6 divisions. The game won't really divide equipment over more than that. But 6 battalions really in training at a given time. But these guys here, I'm gonna actually need solid 4 divisions, maybe even just to hold the line with how under-equipped these guys are. Auxiliaries will be basically be turning a whole bunch of divisions to templates that will be getting rifles, but there's so many. Hopefully the game doesn't just give some divisions full equipment and others nothing. I'm hoping I'll divide up among them all evenly. No guarantees of that, though. This game loves to just absolutely screw me with where it decides to put equipment and stuff like that. It's laughably comfortably bad. Wish it would give me more control over it. These guys are so much better equipped. That might have been derived from my original National Guard. Fully expect the extremely under-equipped division here will get pushed back. But divisions crossing a river, I'll have a hard time with things against entrenched divisions. If I put a few, I can make them lose some amount of organization, gain some experience for the general, and then have these guys participate in counterattack. The idea is just to hold the server line, just as these guys are to hold the Appalachian, this part of the Appalachian Mountains, whether these the Ozarks or God knows what. Oh, there's a gap. I don't have a division on this mountain area. Really? How did I miss that? That's more important than... Yeah, I'm going to need to fund the mountains there. How well equipped are these guys? I mean, compared to a lot of my others, reasonably well. Tomorrow this completes, which means this will be 15, this will be 13. I'll need to swap these. Lots of micro right now. Let's get you some music. Here's. It's more important, obviously, to complete the factory. It's earlier than the infrastructure. Notice I pushed down way to here. Some infrastructure in Michigan, Illinois, like to do just before the Civil War. The AI is bad at building infrastructure before it adds factories, and that'll ensure it doesn't waste industry building factories without maxed infrastructure. And while the non-aligned states do regional industrial integration for me, I don't think those build slots will disappear if they're core territory, and especially if it stacks with generic build slots. At the worst, it would cut the number of slots in half and round down per in each state. This is before they supposedly fixed that in the latest update, though I suspect this is not the first time Paradox has said they fixed that. It probably hasn't actually been fixed. It probably won't ever be fixed. We'll just say 50 times they fixed that bug on the devs. Cool. The McDougal completed. Focusing lots of naval production on getting the Winslow done. What's going on the line? This is basically serial production. Screening ships. But I reused number of dockyards just for each is complete to avoid overflow. Get all the efficiency of serial production without the overflow is the idea. It's very micro intensive, and that's why you should just do parallel production with destroyers to avoid the overflow. So wasted dockyard time is worse than having the destroyers take a little longer to be produced, especially cheap fleet escort destroyers. The more dockyards you put per destroyer, the more overflow you're going to get on average, but the less time you'll spend with a ship partially completed. With having multiple ships partially completed, you can have some of them fully completed and already gain Navy XP from exercises or fighting, and the rest. And others, very little progress. Cool. This thing's coming in and out of repairs. You can see like this dockyard get pulled for repairs, but when it gets reassigned, it goes on this one. I'll keep him in the train queue a little longer. Does save equipment. Yeah. Mark W. Clark. He's not going to be actually holding anything. He's got high attack skill, so. He's an infantry leader, unlike Bradley here. Merge two of these together so it's a little better equipped. 71 infantry equipment. It's really no different than if I had a 2 infantry division. I pre-deploy at 20%, but still allows me to just keep it 6 with most of these things. I'm actually gonna want to double that though. There we go. 2 of these. Because there's so much less experience than the rest, and this is definitely the weak point in the line here. Since they will be fighting alongside artillery, it's better to have more divisions. It's 50 width if they only get attacked in one direction, so very little oversized penalty. Well, there is a bit. But yeah, 2 National Guard divisions. Actually, they won't have 52 width, they'll have 48. Or auxiliary of the same size. The point is, that's the most men I can put on a mountain. Right, well, I lose the war by losing the east, so I really need to make sure that area is well protected. There's stuff like the Texas Panhandle, nice, but not strictly necessary. What am I doing for time? 36 minutes already? Jeez. Apologize, so little's happened here in the video. Stuff that's gone. Europe. The Polish Peasant Union is slowly pushing on tenacious Poland. They'll eventually win for sure. Be nice if this dried down generic build, generic focuses, you know, could add build slots and factories, but that probably won't happen. Unlike Italy, where the terrain and balance of power is much more favorable to prolonged war, which, cool. Mussolini might add an extra build slot or 2. National Spain. Franco is... he's doing better than I thought, but it does look like he's losing. Bit by bit. Which is ideal. I want the Spanish Commune to eventually win, and they'll ally up and with the right opposition, actually help them in their civil war. And then it'll be a Spain, Poland, and the Soviets, hopefully all in a faction together to contain the Nazis. When they try and grab Gdynia, Danzig, they'll end up having to fight the Soviets and maybe even the French right from the start. That'll be good. Historically, the French did guarantee Poland, so hopefully they will do something like that here. Maybe the Italians, they're not going to get almost anything without a fight is the point. Austria, by going non-aligned, will better resist Anschluss, and the Nazis will probably have to actually fight a war. Czechoslovakia is doing their Czech and taunt focus, so they won't go down without, they won't give up the city and land without a fight either. Let's see if they're doing that. Yeah. They might bring in Romania or Yugoslavia to their faction. If they do Romania, then they won't join the Axis. Germans will probably run over all this, but it'll be slower, and that'll buy me more time to deal with my own civil war and not be in a rush to go to Europe. Still be able to do limited interventionism and intervene relatively early in the conflict to make it even slower progress for the Nazis until I eventually join the war. Have an easier time of it. Maybe able to join later. We'll see. working on the Fair Labor Standards Act. I think in my political views, I say a thing about how this is currently being undermined with employers misclassifying employees as independent contractors, which I believe one of my previous employers did as a Social Security Administration. In fact, the IRS has no record of them paying into payroll tax or any taxes for that matter. I think they probably figured if they classified as independent contractor, which they never told me they did, that it, it may be legally. I don't know if they're required to file tax paperwork at that time, but they definitely didn't pay into my payroll tax if they should have, and that's screwing me out of SSDI because I did the work where I probably earned enough work credits. I may have still be one short, depending on this employer, how much I earned exactly, but because an employer did not pay into my payroll tax or even pay any taxes, period, like they didn't do. And they gave me a fake W-2. I remember getting W-2 from them to show it's payroll, state, federal withholding, but then the government doesn't have record. Maybe they just sent maybe they meant to pay their taxes and they sent the paperwork to the wrong, like, address or something dumb. I suppose it's theoretically possible. Uh, but yeah, I mean, young workers who get disabled get screwed, especially if, like me, you went to grad school, because you don't get any credit for studying, obviously, but also work that you do while in school for the university. They don't tell you this, but they don't pay in their payroll taxes either. So I worked for university. I worked as TA. I worked collecting tickets at like an event location and earned enough that I should have earned like 5 or 6 work credits SSDI from that work, but because they don't pay in their payroll, I didn't get any credits. And then an employer not filing their tax paperwork or misclassifying me as an independent contractor, which even if my employer didn't, a lot of employers do that to screw over employees, because then they don't have to pay 7.5% of what they would pay the worker into their contribution to SSDI and Medicare into the FICA taxes. The way it works is employee pays 7.5% of their income and the employer matches it. So they're secretly not paying you as much as they should if they misclassify you like that. They're cheating you. If they don't tell you they're doing it, if they tell you you're doing it, then well, and you're okay with it, you're kind of conspiring together against the government and screwing them. But it's not right. But who's losing out from the equation is different. Um, Still screwing over other businesses and the government and the rest of the United States population in that case. But if the employer is doing it, not telling you, they could very possibly be, and you're not prepared for it, they could very possibly, they're paying you less than you would think you're getting paid essentially. If you don't not agreeing to that for something exchange like a higher base pay rate, then you're getting fucked. And it's essentially theft. It's a form of wage theft. Um, I mean, wage theft is technically something different, but it's the same sort of thing. They're stealing from you by not giving what you expect they're giving you. If you go into a job and you expect that if you got disabled, you'd be paid covered by disability based on your work, because you have to have certain amount of work history, and you're not because the employer is doing this, you're getting screwed. And they're doing it so they can save a buck. So it's out of greed, selfishness. They do things like that. To me, the rich think, ooh, they deserve more. It's not fair how much they have to pay their employees. They think it's their right to screw over people like this. It's sickening. It's not the right to do that to people. This is especially common, I think, that kind of perspective, not with big employers, but small ones, petty bourgeois. That is people who own small businesses. They work, but they also employ people. So they're exploiting the workers, but they don't make enough exploiting the workers to support themselves. And, of course, people want to have the highest standard of living they can. So true bourgeois are like billionaires, or people who could theoretically not work at all. The vast majority of their income comes from investments and employing other people. Petty bourgeois, much larger group. They're small business owners, shop owners, stuff like that. Doctors who have private practices, anyone who employs someone but also works. And the majority of their income comes from their own work still. But they would be less wealthy if they couldn't exploit the workers. And they will still pay the workers as little as they can, all the same. I'm referring to how these things are classified in socialist theory, because, even if you don't agree with socialism, you should at least understand the terminology so you can have intelligent conversation about these things. So many internet fascists you run into forums and they don't know what any of these words mean. It's ridiculous. They're just obnoxious, aggressive assholes. Proudly ignorant. Nobody should be proudly ignorant. That's just... Alright. Let's see. One day till that finishes. Industrialist moves arms factory from Ohio, non-aligned states, to North Carolina, Neo-Confederacy. And that's not great. But if they moved out of the north, it would have deprived me of factory. And it's worth noting, was that into North Carolina, this adds a build slot to the state, so it's technically net positive after the war is over. Okay. Cool. Advanced fitting works. Extra production output. Still ahead of time any of those things. How much? 1,700 funding. Again, it's easier to calculate this. 5.8 a day from production. This only benefits the capital ship builders. 750 funding. All fun, but I should probably get an early start on fleet destroyers here. This is only 750 funding. Nah. I guess fire control methods. Just so I can get a superior design of by the time that's done, 100 days, almost just short of 100 days. Yeah, I'll have that'll give me high-speed cruising, and then I can start on some fleet destroyers. Speed is armor, so to speak. That's an old saying, but yeah, speed is essential for the survival of destroyers. They rely more heavily on than cruisers to have actual armor. Guess there's no overflow there. Cool. Very close on the carrier, too, interestingly. Enterprise. Working on Pennsylvania, New England, and New Jersey infrastructure. So next thing done will actually be this infrastructure in Pennsylvania. So I guess I can actually put that there. Start, I don't know, Pennsylvania Steelworks or whatever earlier. Steelworks are actually a on-map decision to improve steel production, but actual steelworks are in Ohio, but it's iron ore in Pennsylvania is the idea. Cleveland, Ohio steelworks, I guess. This is way before deindustrialization. You know, a lot of industrial production being moved overseas. With steel, the U.S. didn't really so much stop making steel as it didn't stop increasing its production of steel, and improving technology meant it required less and less labor to make the same amount. But started for the U.S. I think was a net exporter of steel after World War II. Talking about deindustrialization, and so it just exported less and less steel, um, while while employing fewer and fewer people to make about the same amount of steel domestically. And I think by this point, the U.S. is net importer of steel. It's not that steelworks were actually moved overseas, it's just new ones weren't stopped being built domestically, relying on essentially the U.S. empire to provide steel. For a while now, the U.S. gets a lot of steel from China, which is part of what's driving all this fear mongering over China, because the U.S. wants to secure its industrial base that's in China. Doesn't think people in another country that do all the actual work that produces our stuff that have the right to actually, have some dignity as an independent country and not be stomped on by the U.S. Like we do in Africa and Latin America. And the U.S. has, of course, tried to dominate China for most of its history, because capitalism always leads to imperialism in the end. Let's see. During war, artillery will be adding light self-propelled artillery to my cavalry division. Yeah, I know it's horses, but later the horses are going to be replaced with motorized, and then I'm going to add some tanks, and it's going to be a tank division that has self-propelled artillery instead of motorized artillery. For the artillery fraction, you should always have a little bit of artillery in your tanks, unless you're combat with women. I know people always do these meta discussions at max combat with, but realistically, you shouldn't be unless you're playing stupidly. As Germany, you should be expanding so quickly that you're not getting to the point where industry reaches combat with being a limiting factor in most places. As the US, you definitely shouldn't in your Civil War. I mean, there's not that many times where combat with is limiting. So even though self-propelled artillery is less efficient in combat with, which it shouldn't be. Honestly, it should take less width than a tank for any kind of artillery, not more. But Paradox refuses to change the balance there, even though it's clearly wrong. So what you gonna do, right? Um, I should probably actually add in a Brooklyn class. Since these use chromium, or should I? I don't really have to finish the Wichita so early. It's a nice anti-air cruiser, but let's see. Brooklyn class says 18 light attack. If I redid it, got rid of this. Boom. Let's see, one of these is 355. This is, yeah, no. I'll have to think carefully about what to do next, but let's see, 5 chromium into that. I could have 3 overflow rather than yeah, I probably should. Enterprise will complete. Start its training. Which shall be done at the end of June. All right. Well, viewers, I gotta eat. I'm almost an hour here in this video. So I wish you all the best. Plus, I'm also considering double thinking. Double thinking is not this. Rethinking whether maybe I should start building some light cruisers or fleet destroyers right away, and maybe do the design of that off camera. So I wish you all the best, viewers. Take care of each other. Be kind to yourselves. You may always find a guiding star to lead you home. Until next time, this is Northstar. Adieu.